Please continue.
May it please the court. Zach, where we left off, you were telling this jury about your oldest sister, Grace.
Yes.
Continue.
Thank you. I don't say this lightly, but my oldest sister, Grace, was the most evil human being I've ever met in my life. She was 10 when she came into our family. The Russian government didn't tell us much about the kids, so we weren't aware of any, if any, behavioral issues there may have been. And there were many, but specifically with her. I would describe her without reservation as an affectionless psychopath. It wasn't that she was immoral, it was more that she was amoral. She didn't have a sense of right and wrong. Her emotional compass was seemingly non-existent. She was just dead inside. She was a masterful manipulator and deceiver. She could lie at the drop of the hat for reasons that might involve her personal gain or just for the heck of it. She would invent the most absurd, crazy, gruesome stories just to get a reaction out of people. And she could talk about this stuff with the same tone that you might talk about making a sandwich. And this from a girl that I knew between the ages of 10 to 14. It was incredibly disturbing, and the things I learned about that type of personality have stayed with me my entire life, because I've never met someone like this since. And with one exception, I had never even heard someone describe another human being like this. And one of the things that is so dangerous about someone like this is, she was literally like a vampire who would just suck the goodness out of other people around her. She could be very emotional, and she would fake these emotions in order to elicit a response in you, a sympathetic response. And if, for instance, you were accusing her of doing something like stealing or hurting one of her siblings, she would weep and just beg you to believe her and say, no, I didn't do it. And then if you would present her with irrefutable proof that we knew you had indeed done this, it was like a mask would just fall off her face. And I mean, she'd just look at you with shark eyes. And no matter how many times we would go through this cycle with her, where she would deceive us and betray our trust and hurt people in our family, she would always reel us back in, because there's something in normal, good people that wants to believe that someone like this can change. You want to believe that, there's redemption for someone like this and that they might change their ways and become a better person. And she knew that. And she would use that in order to ingratiate herself again and regain our trust, only to betray that big trust again harder than she had the first time. And this happened dozens of times, and it created an incredible amount of strife in our home. She could manipulate my parents and drive a wedge between them. She was just an incredibly intelligent person and incredibly evil. And having met someone like that, it made me able to understand, and even though I didn't want to, accept the fact that people like this exist, whether you want to believe it or not. And if you trust them, you are only ever going to get hurt by them again. You have to forgive them at some point. And that was a very difficult thing for me to do. It took me years, but eventually I had to accept an apology from this girl that I never got and was never going to get. And I had to do it for myself. But I would never trust her again. That would be insane. for my own safety or for the safety of others. So this is an experience which I think is somewhat unique. I think most people have not met someone like this. And I mean, we might watch true crime documentaries or things like this, and we know that technically these people are real, but they exist on Netflix or in someone else's lives, and we never once believe that it could be someone we know, or that it could be someone living next door, or that it could be someone that our children play with, or someone we might allow to look after our kids. So knowing this is essential to understanding my reaction to what John began to tell me about Christina Parcell in April and May of 2021 after Aida had been taken back to Greenville. He started describing Christina Parcell's character and her personality. And as he was going through various points, he kept saying, Zach, I know you're not going to believe me. Like, I know this sounds overblown and dramatic, and you probably think I'm exaggerating. And under other circumstances, I would have, because John does, he's a big storyteller, and, when people are talking about their exes, like, everyone thinks their ex is the Antichrist. So, of course, I was sort of predisposed to be biased against what he was telling me, except for the fact that point by point, everything he described about Christina Parcell was exactly the same as my sister Grace. He told me that Christina Parcell was a master manipulator. He said she can lie at the drop of the hat and you'll never know it. He said she was incredibly charming. He said she was incredibly intelligent and talented. He used to say she was smarter than he was, but that her biggest fault was that she was lazy. And she had this arrogance combined with her laziness that was essentially born out of the fact that she knew she never really had to work too hard at anything in life. And she could even sacrifice trust with people and tell them lies that could easily be found out, because ultimately she was completely confident in her ability to reel someone back in, no matter how bad she had burned them before. And he could have been describing Grace to me because I knew this behavior. I had lived through this behavior. So at this point...
I'm sorry. When he was describing these features to you of Christina, had you ever told him about Grace? Did he know anything about Grace?
No. I don't make a habit of talking about Grace to people. One, it's incredibly difficult to speak about, and two, most people, having not met someone like that, it just doesn't really land most of the time. They don't understand what you're talking about. So no, John had no idea that I'd had this experience with Grace, which made me realize that there was no way he could have possibly invented this, because no one would get it right point by point by point unless they had met one of these people. And that was the first thing that really raised a huge red flag with me and made me think that despite the fact that he can exaggerate and overblow the truth, and he's often not very believable when you listen to him, I was convinced at that point that he must be describing something true, because no one would know how to describe it so specifically and accurately if they were just making it up. And I was right to believe him. So, in addition to this description of her character, and one last thing about Grace and Christina by correlation, one thing Grace was she had an addiction to doing was not merely stealing from you or sucker punching one of her siblings just to assert dominance or doing other terrible things to her siblings. She would recruit her other younger siblings to do these things for her. She would get off on making little duplicates of herself and training and enlisting her siblings to act as proxies for her, so that she wouldn't actually get in trouble, because she knew that we all had our eyes on her because of her behavior, and we knew we couldn't trust her. So if she even had 2 minutes with one of her younger siblings where no one was within earshot, she would tell them, hey, Mom's going to go check the mail. I just saw the mail truck go. When she's doing that, I want you to go run into her bedroom and go into her jewelry, or go and get this for me and we'll split it. Go and get that food that Mom said we can't have till the weekend or something. So she was an incredibly corrupting influence on anyone around her that she could exert her influence on. Again, I called her a vampire who sucks the goodness out of others. This is an incredibly appropriate metaphor because that's what vampires do. They're intelligent, they're dead inside, and they eventually kill the people around them unless they find someone who might be useful to them, and then they create a duplicate of themselves that they can control. And this is exactly what Grace would do. So when John was telling me all this, I realized that there was an incredible danger that what Christina Parcell was a future preview of what Aida Mello could potentially become if she was left in this woman's custody and was raised by her. And the facts have borne out that I was right. But
Your Honor, sustaining. Will instruct the jury to disregard the last comment.
Zach, at some point was Grace actually removed from your family?
yes.
Describe for this jury why, or the circumstance or the event that prompted her removal from your family.
It had been 4 years of what I've been describing. She had been sent to different girls' homes around the country, many of which had records of never expelling a single student, and she was the first for many of them that they expelled and sent back to us. And it finally just got so bad that we realized she was going to be a physical danger to our family. I discovered a diary that she had made where she described in detail my parents having their eyes gouged out and dying, and how once my parents were out of the way and dead, she would be able to assume her role as rightful queen of the country. So she just had these psychotic, psychopathic delusions of violence and grandeur. And we called the SS and asked them to remove her from the home.
We're going to come back to that in a second, or in a little while. You've testified about things that John told you about Christina. Did he also provide you with other information about Christina that informed your opinion of her or what you came to know about her?
Yes.
What were some of the documents or other pieces of information that John provided you with?
No objection to hearsay.
You know, we're not offering it for its truth. We're offering it to show what he knew. In State versus Vic, I've decided, Your Honor, we are not offering it for its truth. Go ahead.
He offered me, among other things, 3 very pertinent collections of information. One was the photographs that have been discussed that I sent in mailings to various people, along with advertisements from an escort website, which were connected with these photographs. These photographs were of Christina Parcell in various stages of undress. And John told me that they were prostitution advertisements from her previous career as a prostitute. And looking at these photographs, there was no doubt in my mind that that's what these were. And I don't say this in any way to try to shame. It's simply that, I mean, who said it? Like pornography, you know it when you see it. Well, I think the same can be said in terms of these photographs. They were not cute, sexy, intimate photographs that someone might send to someone they're dating or something. They were lewd and tasteless, and there was a very clear element of advertising, a commercial element. So when I looked at these, there was a vacant, arrogant, almost derisive look in her eyes that reminded me so much of my sister. It was a look that said, I can get you to do whatever I want because you want what I have to offer you. And coupled with this was a deposition from 2016 that Christina Parcell had given.
And 1 second, Zach. Let me show you, Zach, what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 46. Take a look at this.
Yes, this is the deposition.
All right. This time the defense removed Defense Exhibit 46 into evidence.
State objects.
Not hearsay.